Do you think, young boy?
Okay, thanks. Hello again, it's me, Franklin Jones, the author of the book, The Black Matrix. I know some of you have been following me for a while, so you know what my content is. But if you're new, just be prepared, because some things I say may bother you because it contradicts some of your beliefs. Within the Black community, there's lots of disinformation. Our community, we are drowning in disinformation. And this is by design. Now, when I speak to you, I'm going to dissect those falsehoods that you believe to be true in regards to our plight and our condition. After I do that, then I'm going to tell you the truth of our plight and condition. You see, in order for Black liberation to happen, we must have a clear and concise understanding of our plight. Because if our understanding is flawed, then all remedies that stem from this misunderstanding will also be flawed. This is why studying the Willie Lynch has not liberated us. This is why reading our Bibles has not liberated us. We must gain a clear and concise understanding of our plight and condition. We have to be able to orientate ourselves in order to overcome our situation. Now, there are many of you who insist that the Willie Lynch is true, okay? So we're going to talk about the Willie Lynch first, okay? And I'm going to tell you how the Willie Lynch actually adversely affects our community. Now, you insist that it's real because you believe you're seeing the symptoms of it, okay? We'll talk about that also. The Willie Lynch was actually written in 1979 by Dr. Aquina Ashanti. He wrote it. He wrote it to sort of point out the division among us as a result of our condition living under white oppression. This is also why when experts examined the letter, they found that modern words was inconsistent with the 1700 date. So when you're looking at it and you're saying, wow, it must be true, 1700. The date on the Willie Lynch letter is not a copywritten date. That's no different than someone getting a check and putting backdating it to earlier dating it. Willie Lynch is not real. This is why when experts checked it out, they saw it, they proved it was not real. Now, sometimes when you're programmed to believe something about your people, you only notice those things that supports the premise, supports the belief. And you become blind to the things that refutes it. I will give you an example. According to the Willie Lynch syndrome, Black people are programmed to never ever support each other. Now, that myth has been totally busted by the presidency of Barack Obama. When Barack Obama ran, both times he received over 95% of the Black votes. Black people stood in line some places 5 hours to elect him. At his inauguration, millions of Black people flocked to Washington, sitting in the cold to watch him be inaugurated. When the Million Man March, when Farrakhan asked Black people to come out, millions came out on their own dime to support him. When Trayvon Martin was killed, Black people from all over the nation drove to Florida on their own dime to support him. See, what happens when you're programmed to believe something, you only see those things that confirms it. The Willie Lynch myth is a falsehood. Moreover, the Willie Lynch myth harms the Black community. It harms the Black psyche. This is why, after it was written by Dr. Ashanti, white propagandists took it and spread it throughout our community. Here is why, because the Willie Lynch adversely affects us. In the military doctrine of psychological warfare, and it's taught in the CIA, the FBI, the military, it says the most effective way to subdue a targeted population is to convince them that their core problem is an internalized one. When the oppressed believe that their core problem is an internalized one, this turns their collective aggressions away from their oppressors and redirects it inward against themselves. This is what Willie Lynch does to Black people. It makes us believe we are something inherently wrong with us. The Willie Lynch myth he's been used as a psychological warfare program against Black people. Now, there are those of you who believe that our plight is the result of a Bible story. Yes, we're the people in the Bible. In reality, the Bible was written in 325 AD under the rulership of Emperor Constantine, and the bishops of council. These men took 30 days to come together and create what we have now today as modern Christianity. The Roman society was an immoral society. They engaged in orgies, homosexuality, bestiality. This is the people who wrote the Bible. So when you're trying to say that it was written by men ordained by God, that's a narrative that you want to believe. But Constantine was a dictator who put people to death. In fact, when the Bible was written, there was an African named Arian who opposed it, and they banished him because he knew that Christianity was a falsehood. It is not a true religion. And the reason why they created the Jesus story, because the Jesus story gave the church greater power. Because it said that Jesus was the key to heaven, and since the church controlled the Jesus image, this meant that the church holds the power, the key to heaven. That's immense power on earth. It's a fallacy. So now that I told you that our condition has nothing to do with Willie Lynch myth, it has nothing to do with a Bible story written by our oppressors, a Bible written by the most immoral, the most racist, the most violent, the most ungodliest people we've ever encountered. It's not the Word of God. Now, furthermore on that subject, when the early white Christians converted Africans to their faith, it had absolutely nothing to do with saving the souls of the Africans. Absolutely not. Excuse me. Now, this is an irrefutable statement because the early white Christians believed that Africans weren't humans, that Africans had no souls, and that heaven was for whites only. In fact, the early white Christians believed the mere thought of an African entering the kingdom of heaven was as ridiculous as a dog doing so. This is a fact. The true reason they put their time and energy into a people they otherwise brutalized was to serve their interests. People function based upon the narratives they receive and the media and the images they see. So the reason why they converted Africans into Christian was to indoctrinate the narrative of a white God into their minds and show them the picture of a white Messiah. Once the African accepted those images and the narrative, this created an adoration towards whiteness. And this adoration towards whiteness subconsciously transfers over to white people. So making black people more subservient towards whites. So therefore, the indoctrination of Christianity made Africans into better slaves for whites, and it helped to facilitate the colonization of Africans. That is the truth. Okay, now I tell you, so therefore we know our condition has nothing to do with a Bible or Willie Lynch, okay? Our condition is a science. It's a science of long-term oppression and a science of how we maintain dominance, okay? When people are oppressed for a long time, their collective aggressions against their oppressors will continue to grow until acts of rebellion and retribution happens. This is inevitable. It is a part of the human condition and psyche, okay? The only way to prevent this from happening, the only way is to turn the oppressed population's collective aggressions inward against themselves and away from the oppressive society. And you do this by constantly demoralizing the oppressed. You keep giving them false negative narratives about themselves. You convince them that it's themselves that are their own worst enemies. And this is how you maintain dominance. It's a divide and conquer tactic that works through demoralization. And that's what's being done to us. It is time to wake up and recognize the white society controls the narratives that we see, the media images we see, the education that we're taught. They therefore control our entire interpretation of reality, as well as our image of ourselves. You see, the white society's greatest power is that they control the narratives that the world believes. The world functions not on facts. The world functions based upon prevailing narratives and the media images. I'm going to give you an example of what makes it. Have you ever asked yourself, how is it possible that whites are often perceived as the racial group with the highest ethics and morals, in spite of their brutal history to the contrary? For throughout history, whites have killed more people than any other race on the planet. But yet, they are perceived as the highest. Why? It's because society does not function based upon facts nor reality. They function based upon the narratives, and the narratives that are fed into our society comes from white people. When white people feed narratives into our society, they put out narratives that falsely exalt themselves. This is also why black people are more often negatively viewed in our society. Because when white society puts out narratives about black people, they are negative narratives. They vilify black people to validate their past and present mistreatment of black people. They dehumanize black people to make others insensitive to our plight. And they demoralize us because when we are demoralized, we become self-hating and divided. These are tactics of how oppressors maintain their dominance. It's all a part of social studies. There's a science to maintain dominance. And the oppressor will never teach you this stuff because they don't want you to see what's being done to you. It's time to wake up and recognize what's being done to us. The white society creates a narrative that the world believes, and we function based upon those narratives. The negative narrative is called, for us, it's called manufactured consent to mistreat. They create a setting that manufactures their consent. We receive these narratives and we start functioning upon these narratives. This is the truth of our plight, and it's time to wake up. This year is the 400th anniversary since the first African slaves were brought to America. If after 400 years we're still clinging to myths and fairy tales, that's ridiculous. It's time to wake up. They are using psychological warfare against us, divide and conquer. They use their monopoly over the information we receive about ourselves, the media we're taught, and they program our minds to think in ways that serves their interests. This has been done throughout history. You see, while the oppressors or the conquerors can conquer a people, enslave them, and brutalize them, they can't maintain peace for long with those people unless they develop methods for controlling the minds of the people. So they always use their monopoly over narratives to feed into the minds of the people and media images that serves and protects their interests. The reason why many black peoples are now self-hating, perceive themselves as their own worst enemy, and love whites in spite of a brutal history to the contrary is a result of social engineering by the white society. Because the white society controls the narratives that we receive, the media images we see, and the education we're taught. This allows them to control what we believe. Once we recognize it, we will start developing counter strategies, proper counter strategies, once we see what's happening to us. Your entire perception of reality is a white deception. Everything that's being done to us is a reason. Okay, for example, miseducation. Many of us are saying, why is there learning more black history on social media than in our schools? That's a design because for one group to maintain their dominance over the other group, the education given to the oppressed must be the least racially valuing. So when the oppressed group is denied a fully racially affirming education, this psychologically assigns them to accept their lower status within the society. We are being socially engineered through an education process to believe that whites are inherently superior and are therefore supposed to rule over us. And they're being miseducated to believe that they are superior. We are constantly being given a fraudulent perception of ourselves. Like I'll give you an example, which you may not know this because you're always getting information from the white society. But the reality is this: if it wasn't for black people, we wouldn't have the internet. We wouldn't have accurate weather forecasting. We wouldn't have skyscrapers that the tallest building probably 4 feet high because black people invented the elevator, the air conditioning system, the heating system. We wouldn't have cars because black people invented the motor, the spark, and the first car. We wouldn't have the modern PC. We wouldn't have the refrigerator. See, your perception of reality is a white deception because the white society controls the narratives that you read and you receive. They give you false narrative to instill the myth of their superiority into your mind. Social scientists describe this as instilling a value system into the collective minds of black people that makes us adhere to white dominance over our lives. They are social scientists. That's how society is created. We function based upon the narratives, and white society controls the narrative. I'll give you an example how narrative affects us. If I asked many of you who invented the light bulb, who do we thank for the light bulbs we have in our homes today? You would say Thomas Edison. But that's a complete falsehood. When Thomas Edison invented his light bulb, he merely rushed to get his patent done. And when he did it, his light bulb was not efficient. Sometimes it lasts less than an hour. So the government didn't give him contracts to mass produce it. Companies didn't buy the patent from him. No one did. It wasn't until shortly thereafter when Lewis Latimer patented his light bulb. Lewis Latimer, an African American. And Lewis Latimer also wrote the patent for Graham Bell's telephone. Okay? Now back to when Lewis Latimer made his light bulb and